Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Thank you all for being here, acknowledging that we are on stolen native land, and acknowledging the Multnomah, the Chinook tribes, and the many, many tribes that converged here over thousands of years. I'm here today to be part of this Engaging Men conference and to talk about how systems of oppression are linked to gender-based violence. So, woman, I will not stop until your legs tremble and the neighbors hear you scream my name. Sounds like fun, right? Sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like he's making some promises that we don't know if he can keep. But the truth is that the only real scenario in which the neighbors are going to hear her scream his name are if he's hurting her. That's the truth. And so, why? Where did all the romance go? Where did all that pleasure go? Where did all that anticipation go, right? And I'm not here to give you a relationship counseling session, that's a different conversation. But we need to talk about what the roots of the problem are, because that is a fact worldwide. The neighbors will only hear her scream his name if he's hurting her. So we need to find out what is really happening here. So before we go into this, I'm going to give you a trigger warning. This is really important. We will go into deep historical trauma from all around the world in multiple scenarios. We will use the word rape. We will talk about assault. We will talk about war, violence, death, slavery, genocide, and imprisonment. You may feel uncomfortable and defensive. I am not going to censor anything that I say to protect any fragility. Not even a bit. So, if you feel uncomfortable and defensive and you need to step out, go into a safe space, feel free to do so. Okay, I want you to take care of yourself. Also, I'm sure that you know that there are people who are here and ready and able to talk with you also and be able to work through that with you. So just be aware and make sure that you take care of yourself. I don't want to be interrupted. So be aware, no interruptions. This presentation will show how systems of oppression work and how they are related to gender-based violence. We will not be able to cover all the issues due to time constraints, but that does not mean that the issues that we don't cover are not important. They are extremely important. So I just want you to be aware of that. And also that there are workshops here today that are covering various things that I'm not going into detail in as well, so it was with that in mind as well. So I'm going to start with colonialism, imperialism, and empire. Colonialism refers, or imperialism really, refers to control over a piece of land and its people by a more dominant power. So we're going to look at some definitions so that you understand. Colonialism, establishment of a colony by sending a group of people from a dominant power to live in and control a weaker one. For example, the US was once a British colony, India was once a British colony, the Philippines was once a US colony. Imperialism, however, is a broader term. Imperialism implies domination of a group of people and their land, which may include colonization, but doesn't require it. For example, the US controlling Afghanistan, the US using foreign aid in return for countries protecting their interests, the US attempt to control Cuba by forcing the embargo. All of this is imperialism, and it is empire. So this is a map of the world in the 18th century, and all of these different colors that you see here, they are all different empires. So if you look here, I'm not sure if any of these are lights. Yeah, here we go. So if you see this blue in Africa, parts of North America, and This is the French Empire. If you see this dark red, dark red, dark red, dark red, this is the British Empire. Dark red, dark red, dark red. If you look at the bright red, that's the Spanish Empire. If you look at the green, that's the Portuguese Empire. And on and on and on. So if you notice, the dominant theme is that these are white empires. These are European empires. And many of you may know all of this already, but it's important to understand the roots of what systems of oppression are in order to understand how it manifests in her screaming his name. This is the propaganda of empire. She's empire. She is a mother, and all her colonies are children, and they adore her, they love her, they can't be without her. They are literally attached to her breast. This is the reality. Empire is this little baby right here being taken care of by his Indian nanny. That's what's really going on. Pampered, cosseted, precious clothes, precious little pram right here, an umbrella, don't forget, must shield the white man from the sun. This is the reality. So the British Empire was formed by people in the US, and then the US became the empire. And they became the empire with the term manifest destiny. Our manifest destiny to overspread and possess the whole of the continent which Providence has given us for the development of the great experiment of liberty and federated self-government entrusted to us. In other words, this is our destiny. And it's our destiny because God gave it to us. And it's our destiny because we've got the best government idea in the whole world. Liberty and federated self-government. And that federated self-government was the brainchild of white men. She is liberty. She's blonde. She's white. Her clothes are barely hanging off her breast just in case she needs to whip one out and feed a colony. If you notice, beneath her, there are pioneers in pioneer wagons. And they're pushing the native people and the native life on that land further and further off the land. If you notice, there's the mail, there are coal trains, there are power cables in her hands. There are ships behind her bringing goods from other countries, bringing slaves from other countries, bringing enslaved people, I should say. So she's liberty. She's liberty. And she's flying because she's free, right? And also the word pioneer is a very racist word, right? These were not pioneers, they didn't find anything, they didn't discover anything, they were invaders without papers. They did not have papers. So MLK said, our nation was born in genocide when it embraced the doctrine that the original man, the Indian, was an inferior race. That the original American, the Indian, was an inferior race. So MLK acknowledged very clearly this nation was born in genocide. But you see, let's not forget, right, the founding fathers, they came up with that liberty and federated self-government, except that those founding fathers, George Washington, Ben Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, they met with the Iroquois natives frequently. The Iroquois were a confederation of 6 tribes on the East Coast, and they met with these white men, and they talked to them about the Great Law of Peace. Because they said, you're ruled by the British, and that means that you're not free. You are ruled by an empire. An empire is evil. You need the Great Law of Peace. What does the Great Law of Peace tell us? Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right of women to participate in government, separation of powers, checks and balances, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. 3 branches of government and a women's council. Apart from the right of women to participate in government and a women's council, the founding fathers, those white men, the royal courts of worship, They adopted all of these principles of the Great Law of Peace. And the Women's Council, they put a bunch of old white men on there and called it the Supreme Court. But you see, the central underlying political philosophy of the Iroquois people, and in fact, many people throughout the entire continent, the Great Law of Peace was their law, was that peace was the will of the Creator and the ultimate spiritual goal and natural order among humans. So this is the US Supreme Court, and I won't even bother telling you what year it was from, because it basically looked like this for 200 fucking years. They weren't following the Great Law of Peace, because according to the white man, they didn't care about peace. It wasn't the will of the Creator, according to them. They really didn't care. And we know this because women, despite the fact that the Great Law of Peace tells us women have a right to participate in government, they couldn't vote in this country until the 19th Amendment in 1920. And even though that gave all women the right to vote, women of color, of course, particularly black women, couldn't vote in most of this country until the 60s and 70s. Taxes, tests, and threats kept them away. In 2017, women still only make up 20 to 25% of the governing bodies at local, state, and federal levels throughout the entire land. Only 20 to 25%. That means that women cannot, and historically have never self-determined in the US. They have never done so. And of course, like this committee right here, this committee oversees abortion rights. Now, I'm not going to get all white feminist on you and pretend like abortion is the only thing that women care about, because it's not. But it is telling that right here, they are basically all white men, except for this guy who's kind of an honorary white man. But they're also all pro-choice, or I'm sorry, anti-choice is what I should say. Yeah. So a Cheyenne proverb tells us, a nation is not conquered until the hearts of its women are on the ground. Then it is finished, no matter how brave its warriors or how strong their weapons. A nation is not conquered until the hearts of its women are on the ground. So, in many different indigenous cultures throughout the world, they had matrilineal descent cultures. In other words, they were known by their mother's family. They were known by their mother. They would introduce themselves as the son of their mother. And women had a great deal of power. That changed when white men came in. It changed because they imposed European patriarchal structures, as we saw with the white men on the Supreme Court. They imposed patriarchal structures, cultural change. In 1985, the Indian Act in Canada stripped status from women who married non-Aboriginal people. So women who married non-Indigenous people were stripped of their Indigenous status. Studies in Canada show that Aboriginal women rank among the most severely disadvantaged, and it's true in the States as well. They suffer from violence, abuse, inadequate housing and living conditions, alcohol and drug abuse. So this is a map of the British Empire at its height. And everything that you see here in red was controlled by the Crown. I want you to concentrate on the continent of Africa right here. So all of this that's in red was controlled by the British Empire, and all of this that's in blue was controlled by the French. This is Africa today. All of these logos that you see here, they're all fossil fuel logos. And every single one of them is British and French. Every single one of them. So what does that tell us? It tells us that corporations are colonizing powers, and in fact have always been colonizing powers. The British Empire was begun by the East India Company, as a corporation that went to India and said, oh, no, we just want to trade with you. So what we see is that the patriarchal structures and the cultural change and the physical domination of colonization and imperialism begins with corporations. And that means that indigenous women in this country, they're murdered at 10 times the national average of all other women. 61% of Native women suffer assault in their lifetimes, mostly by non-Native men. Non-Native men, then who is it? They're targeted and abducted by fossil fuel workers who come onto their lands to exploit their fossil fuel resources and to exploit their bodies too. They go missing, they are trafficked, they are raped, they are killed. These are hard facts. We fight wars to maintain our fossil fuel empire. John Bolton, who was a key architect, you may have seen him on TV, he has this giant evil man moustache. He said that the Middle East was a critical oil and natural gas producing region that we, the USA, fought so many wars to try and protect our economy from the adverse impact of losing that supply. We fought many wars. He's openly admitting that all of our wars in the Middle East have nothing to do with democracy and everything to do with oil. Who suffers most in war? Who suffers most in war, right? Even if you're not bombed out of your home, even if you're not starved to death, even if you don't die of some disease because all of the water is contaminated, right? You're going to be raped, you're going to be tortured, you're going to be abducted by their security forces and tortured into giving up information, most of which probably isn't even true. Rape is a weapon of war. A 14-year-old Iraqi girl was gang raped by 5 US soldiers, and this picture, I've deliberately blurred it and cut half of it out to protect her. The reason why I could even find this picture is because it was found on a pornographic site. They took the pictures themselves. The picture depicts, it doesn't depict, it shows 3 men actively gang raping her, in uniform, wearing masks. She's a 14-year-old girl. The soldiers, while they were raping her, they shot her family dead, including her 6-year-old sister. And then they put a pillow over her face and shot her dead too. Only 1 soldier was convicted, and that too of murder. And that was in a civilian court, because the US Army didn't do anything about it. They discharged him for personality disorder. Rape is increasingly used as a weapon of war, and I want you to pay close attention to the continent of Africa. Liberia, Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Darfur. If you notice, Burma, Iraq, Syria, Bosnia, Haiti, Liberia, if you notice, these are all lands that were colonized. These are all lands that were controlled at some point by white men that are also increasingly having their resources stripped from them. And rape is being used as a weapon of war. Why is rape used as a weapon of war? So, first of all, it's actually a very powerful weapon because it humiliates. It demoralizes that community so easily because not only is the woman personally ashamed, afraid, and doesn't know what to do or how to or how to deal with it, but often, in fact, almost all the time, her husband has no idea how to deal with it. He feels ashamed and degraded because he couldn't protect his wife. His children are terrorized, their children are terrorized, they couldn't protect their mother. Right? It's now normalized. Rape is normalized. Right? It crushes a community. It's also ethnic cleansing. Because not only is it possible that the woman who gets raped might bear a child from her rapist, but she can also be so damaged that she can never have children again. You can get most rape in war is gang rape. And one particular condition, not condition, I guess it's an injury, I'm not even sure how you would categorize it. It's called fistula. Fistula means when the flesh between the vagina and the anus and the bladder is torn. How the hell is she supposed to live through that? And even if she does, what we find out is it doesn't matter how much she cleans, she smells. So not only is she ostracized for having been raped, she's ostracized for now how her body is, just in and of itself. Imagine having to go through labor when you are suffering from fistula. The UN declares rape a weapon of war in 2008. It is now more dangerous for a woman than a soldier in modern conflicts. Around 70,000 women die every year from unsafe abortions as a result of rape, and many more suffer infections and other consequences. They didn't say fistula because it's too awful. Women are more likely than men to contract HIV through sexual encounters. Notice how they call it sexual encounters. About 42% of all persons infected with HIV are women. A Time article said, rape may be a common war tactic, but it was only prosecuted as a crime against humanity in 1998 by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, following the discovery of the rape camps used by Serb soldiers during the Bosnian War. So it was only in 1998 that the international community said, oh my God, this is a rape crime. By the way, Yugoslavia is where white people live, right? White people. And it was white women who were gang raped in that war. So all of a sudden it's a crime against humanity. But it's always been a crime against humanity. So I want to draw attention to this particular picture. So this is Kabul in the 1970s. This picture you will find on a lot of like extreme right-wing sites, you know, like, look, they used to be westernized. We could go and do that again. We can go and like westernize the women, then they can be free. Right? First of all, wearing Western clothes doesn't mean you're free. That's for sure. But one thing that we need to know is that 45 is now using this picture to justify going back to war in Afghanistan, even now. So you need to be aware of that, of what's happening. But the reason why I actually wanted to talk about this is because this picture aside, right, this picture means nothing, okay? But the truth is that until the 1970s, women's rights were increasing in Afghanistan. Increasing with each decade, they were moving forward. And it wasn't until the conflicts with the Soviet coup and the occupations and all of these white men coming in that they had their rights continuously stripped away. And when it came to the Taliban, they were more and more stripping women of their rights until we have the situation today, which is as horrific as we know it's ever been. So, rape is known as the slow genocide. Infections and injuries to women, diseases that spread to the community, because if you've been infected with HIV and there is no treatment available, you don't even know that you've been infected. And then, of course, if you have children born, and if your children are now mixed children born from that trauma, they also have trauma, of course, because they are ostracized, they are shunned. They can't be family. The shame destroys families. Often the husbands end up beating their wives because they don't know how to handle it. So it literally can destroy an entire community and even an entire race. The International Criminal Court gives a definition of genocide. Genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, such as A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, D, imposing measures intended to prevent birth within the group, and E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. That's what this is all about, right? It's all about this genocidal white supremacist state that has existed for 500 years and continues to exist. It's not over. Did you notice in the definitions of colonialism and imperialism that there was not the word government in there? At no point did it say, oh, when one government imposes another government or another country. No, it is corporations, it is militaries, it is mercenaries, it is religions, it is all of these different patriarchal groups that force and control and dominate others because they can and because they want those resources. So let's talk about capitalism. Afrin really liked it, like she chose it. Capitalism, yay, enjoy. So what is capitalism? Capitalism is the political and economic system in which corporate empires have the legal power to oppress, exploit, and dehumanize people, and extract, commodify, and pollute the natural resources of Mother Earth for profit. To oppress, exploit, and dehumanize people. How can we possibly say that? Don't we know the good capitalism does around the world? So where did it come from? So 200 years ago. So while we're well into the colonial empires, right, that have begun to dominate the entire world, the Industrial Revolution began in the 18th century. And what that meant was that they were burning coal in order to produce energy. And that meant that with all of this energy, they could produce things on a large scale, on a huge scale, because they could use machines now. And through the increasing use of that whole steam power and the change of the world from wood to other biofuels, it meant that they could mass produce. But in order to mass produce, they needed cheap labor, right? Because people needed to work machines. So not only did it mean that they, within their own countries, had massive amounts of horrific work conditions with factories and labor camps. They also had child labor. And it also meant that they were like, well, we've got all these colonies with all these black and brown people. I mean, why don't we just force them to do the work? So they enslaved many, many people, and they brought them over, and they forced them to do the work. So that, less of the white people had to do it. And what that meant was that a bunch of elite white people who owned all of these corporations, they could sit around in their powdered wigs and do nothing. And sit for their tea that came from their colonial empire, and sip their chocolate and their coffee that all came from their colonial empires, and they can enjoy their life. Capitalism today is exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. It's just that you may not see that child labor, you may not see that factory work, you may not see the enslaved people, but they're right here. They're called prisoners in prison. And they're also in the global south, everywhere. So let's talk about the prisons. As we know, our prisons have increasingly become privatized, and the prison industry is a corporate industry now. So what we know is that the entire system is designed to keep the prisons as full as possible, because otherwise who's going to make all this junk that we all need, right? Who's going to make all of this stuff? So quotas for prisoners were written into the contracts, giving incentives for keeping the jails full. In Colorado, wives of judges were investing in prisons. They were investing in prisons because they knew that they were going to make money. It's a sure buck, right? In Pennsylvania, a judge was fired for misconduct because he was deliberately sending people to prison in order to do the labor. And I mean, honestly, really, when you think about it, it's a joke, because all of these judges are doing exactly the same thing. So why aren't they all fired? And if we're going to put people in prison, why don't we put them in prison? So when we're talking about capitalism and who actually benefits from it, let's take a look at the actual numbers. If the US landmass were to be divided by US wealth, 1% would own this much, 9% would own this much, so 10% owns all of this, 30% would own all of this, 40% would own all of this, 20% would own all this, and 40% would own this red dot right there. And that's in Texas, who wants that anyway? So by the way, this slide is actually 2 years old. Right now it's actually much worse than this. In other words, who actually owns all of this stuff that the capitalist empire is making? But our economy is doing so well, it's growing, right? It's awesome. No, it's a few white men who own all of this stuff. So Victor Laval, in 1955, he said this on economic growth, because they were like, it was during the Cold War, it was right after World War II, Europe had just been really slammed by World War II, so they were all like, how do we get our economy growing again? Victor Laval said, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. Doesn't that describe the last 70 years to a T? Our spiritual satisfaction in things. We need to convert the buying and selling into rituals. Have you noticed that every single holiday that we have is all about buying shit? Right? Have you noticed that Thanksgiving dinner, which is supposed to be like a sacred meal that we share, it's this incredibly stressful thing because it's all about what you bought for it. So let's look at how this all works, right? These things need to be burned up as quickly as possible. Well, how do we burn them up? First of all, we extract them from the earth, right? Because she's just an object, so just take whatever you want from her. And then you produce it, and then you send it and distribute it, and then you consume it, and then you dispose of it. And this is a linear thing. It's not that you're disposing of it by actually, recycling it, putting it back into the earth, and it creates a new beautiful thing. No. Just burn it, dump it somewhere, and make more crap. This is not sustainable in any way. But we've just been doing it because we've been convinced by the white capitalist empire that this is what we need to do because this is our spiritual satisfaction. So, because of this, we consume twice as much now as 50 years ago. The US has 5% of the world's population, but uses 30% of the resources and makes 30% of the waste. If everyone on our planet consumed at these rates, we would need 3 to 5 planets to sustain us. These are facts. Gross domestic products, our entire economy and our capitalist system depends on this number, right? The GDP. Because that tells us how fast our economy is growing, and the economy must always grow. It must always grow. And basically this number goes up if you cut down a whole forest. This number goes up if you imprison a whole bunch of people. This number goes up if all of the resources are concentrated in one area. This number means nothing when it comes to justice. Means nothing. This number is basically a number that's been prettied up with respectability politics to simply reflect how much white men are taking from the rest of us. Capitalism is greed, it is selfishness, and it is short-sightedness. We cannot go on this way. Even if the white men wanted to go on forever, no, eventually they would also be destroyed because it is not sustainable. The planet does not have this many resources and we cannot survive this way. So let's look at the increasing link between capitalism and colonialism. Colonizers took control of land and the land's people by imposing European culture of capitalism and materialism. In order to do this, they destroyed indigenous cultures that protected the people and the land. They destroyed their spiritual beliefs, they destroyed their languages. Because how can you protect anyone's spiritual beliefs when you want to convince them that things are their spirituality? Right? They destroyed their languages because how are you going to buy anything if you can't read what's on the packet of this label that I want to sell you? Right? You need to learn my language. You need to speak what I speak. You need to follow my patriarchal family structure, not your matrilineal structure that upholds and protects and honors the dignity of women, but our patriarchal structure that imposes you and ensures that you're never going to speak his name unless he's hurting you. Right? So they destroy their languages, their spiritual beliefs, their family structures, their relationships, so that only European culture is seen as acceptable. If colonizers could not destroy a part of indigenous culture, they co-opted it, they bastardized it, and they pretended that it was white culture, such as the Great Law of Peace, because the United States Constitution is based on it. They couldn't destroy that idea. It was too good. So they said it's our idea, and that's what makes us the founding fathers. And what is the result? What is the result of this capitalist colonial system? We are overworked, isolated, unhealthy, and happy. But don't worry, just go buy more stuff. Feeling sad and depressed? Are you anxious? Worried about the future? Feeling isolated and alone? You're suffering from capitalism, dude. Symptoms may include homelessness, unemployment, poverty, hunger, feelings of powerlessness, fear, apathy, boredom, cultural decay, loss of identity, extreme self-consciousness, loss of free speech, incarceration, suicidal thoughts, and death. This is the reality of the white capitalist empire. And if you look at who's actually doing the work in this capitalist empire, if you look at the workforce, women are more than half. So when you look at the workforce, women are more than half. But the CEOs, we're less than 5%. We're less than 5%. Yet again, who's really in charge? Let's get back to the actual, outcomes or symptoms, I suppose I should say. This is gender-based violence. This is gender-based violence. Cultural decay, loss of identity, apathy, fear, powerlessness, poverty, homelessness, incarceration, loss of free speech. This is gender-based violence. Capitalism is the market system run by men that makes humans, particularly women of color and people of color, a commodity. It also makes nature and all life a commodity. And what we know from this capitalist system is that just 90 corporations cause 2/3 of man-made global warming. In other words, these corporations run by white men have destroyed the planet. Who are the people who are actually going to suffer? The biggest 5 oil companies made $135 billion in profit last year. Why in the world are we giving them at least $10 billion in subsidies while we are closing public schools? The gender pay gap, right? Because as we saw, right, the women are over half of the workforce, and yet we're the least in CEOs, or the least in the people running things. So if we're half the workforce, how much are we actually making? So for every dollar that a man makes in the same job, a white woman makes 77 cents, a black woman makes 69 cents, and a Latinx woman makes 57 cents. So not only is there a gender disparity, there is a race disparity. And this is true in every industry, across the board. Across the board. It averages out to $11,000 a year in loss of wages. That's gender-based violence. That's gender-based violence. A woman's work is never done though, because so she just went to work, she made $11,000 less than every man that she works with, and then she has to come home and do all of the free labor and do most of it and not get paid for that either. So it turns out that Italy is actually the land where women do the most of the unpaid labor, 21 hours of it, in comparison to men, how much unpaid labor men do. That's why women make up the majority of the world's poorest people. It's not because they're not working, it's because you won't pay them. That's why. That's gender-based violence. That's gender-based violence. They own just 1% of the world's land, women. Women own just 1% of the world's land. And remember the slide we had earlier of the, where is it? This thing. 10% owns all of this, and they're all white men. So when we're looking at things, we're seeing that the system itself is set up to be gender-based violence. And yet this schmuck right here, he says, I can understand wanting to have $1 million, but I mean, after that, really, it's the same hamburger. And of course, in the tech industry, women are promoted less and paid less, just the same as every other industry. In the tech industry, they found that both the uncontrolled, the 20.7%, and the controlled 1.4% gender pay gaps in the tech industry were smaller than the pay gaps in other industries, but they were still there. The tech pays more, but the gap is still there. The gap is still there. And of course, what we find out is actually many of these extreme right-wing white supremacist people work in the tech industry. They work in the tech industry. So, stolen wages, right? And this is a slide that was actually talking about the stolen wages of indigenous people. But it's basically a reflection of the stolen wages from women of color as well, right? So stolen wages, well, that's got economic consequences because you've got poverty, you've got lack of property, lack of assets, lack of inheritance, right? So your children aren't going to get anything, so they're stuck in this cycle of poverty. You've got emotional and social consequences, you've got racism, assimilation, right? You've got loss of culture, stereotyping, increase in violence, homelessness, and drug and alcohol abuse, because really, if you're stuck in this, you're going to find some way to try and cope with it. It's really a rational decision in an irrational world. And then they say that, well, you know, you've just got problems adapting to be free. You've got problems adapting to freedom. It's pretty clear that capitalism isn't working. So let's talk about patriarchy. And I want to warn everyone, right? Trigger warning. Okay, deep historical trauma. You may feel uncomfortable and defensive. Patriarchy, a society is patriarchal to the extent that it is male-dominated, male-identified, and male-centered. One of its key characteristics is the oppression of women. One, not all. Okay, really important to understand that. Homophobia, transphobia, speciesism, right? Ableism, these are all characteristics of a patriarchal society. Did you need that? Okay. Okay. Male supremacy is fused into the language so that every sentence both heralds and confirms it, and affirms it, I should say. So we're taught that men are inherently better in a patriarchal society, right? We're taught that they're physically better, mentally better, emotionally better, even spiritually in patriarchal religions, right? Because not all spiritualities around the world teach this, but Western religions, particularly patriarchal religions, teach us men are superior, God is a man, shut the hell up, right? So we see this every day when menstrual cycles are mocked and women get told, oh, are you on rag? Is that why you're irritable? Is that why you're unhappy? Right? When women are told they talk too much, right? Except that studies have shown that in every scenario, men always talk more. And then the moment the woman says something, he's like, shut up, you're always talking. Right? When women are told they talk too much, when we're told they're too emotional, when we're told that men are leaders and women are bossy, right? When boys tell each other, you cry like a girl. Right? But why do they tell each other that? Because their fathers told them, boys don't cry. Right? That's patriarchy showing up. When boys are not allowed to express themselves, when young children are not allowed to express themselves, and then they regulate on the other boys around them, they regulate on the other children around them, you're not allowed to feel either. If I'm not allowed to feel, you're not going to feel. Right? When girls are told to shave their legs, I don't shave my legs. Fuck it. Right? When older men's looks are called distinguished and older women are called haggard. Right? When women are asked if they remember correctly when they speak up about being abused. I've never heard anyone ask a man, are you sure you're remembering this correctly? When a man is telling you about something that happened in his life, I've never heard it ever. I've never heard anyone say, nah, you must not be remembering it right. And this shows up in relationship inequality, right? Women are expected to work and also child rear, and also do all of those chores. They take their husband's name, they lose their own identity, they're expected to nurture and always give, while men are expected to always take. And of course, we see violence against women, right? This graphic says 1 in 4, it's actually 1 in 3. And that is also actually a number around the world. 1 in 3 women will experience domestic abuse. Most female homicides are committed by their partners, 3 every day. 3 every day, that's in this country. In my experience, this number, well actually no, let me just go on. So rape culture, right, we live in this rape culture, and everyone's like, what are you talking about rape culture? Why did you say that? So the truth is that women are taught that they exist for the pleasure of men, right? That's what women and girls and femme-bodied people are taught, that they exist to give men pleasure, and men are taught that they exist to take pleasure. That's what they've been taught. You're supposed to enjoy a woman's body. You're supposed to enjoy yourself, right? That means that women get blamed for being raped because, why? Why didn't you just enjoy it? I've heard that. Why didn't you just lay back and enjoy it? I've heard that, right? That means most people who are raped are not going to talk about it. Only 32% of rapes are reported. Society depicts women as existing for the use of men. Women of color are most likely to be raped and or sexually assaulted. So here are some statistics on rape, right? So, we can stop asking this stupid question of, well, what does rape culture even mean? 63% of all reported rapes were committed by white males. Study in 2014. 63%, that's well over half. Well over half. Women of color most likely to be raped. Let's look at this. Native American women, meaning indigenous women, 34.1%. Mixed race women, 24.4%. Black women, 18.18%. White women, 17.7%. That's pretty stark. That's pretty stark. Sex offense victims, 67,000 were female, 12,000 were male. So what that means is you're most likely to suffer from sex crimes if you are female, but it doesn't mean that males don't suffer from it, right? Males also suffer from this. Convicted sex offenders, 70,000 were male, just over 4,000 were female. 21.8% of all rapes suffered by women are gang rapes. So what that means is that it means that it's not some, guy who's sneaking around and hopes that no one finds out. No, it's a cultural ritual amongst men. It's a cultural ritual amongst men. It's a bonding exercise. So men, there's hazing, right? In colleges, in fraternities, in sororities, there's hazing, right? Often we find out that actually it was sexual abuse that was going on, right? It's culture. That's why we call it rape culture. 66% of rape victims are raped by someone they already know. That's a 2002 study. I could only find this statistic because there weren't any others. It's not important enough. It's not important enough to a white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist culture. Why would they tell you about it when they want women to be the things that men exploit, right? Burned up and used at an ever-accelerating rate. 8 out of 10 women in the military experience rape and or sexual assault. In their books, it's called unwanted sexual contact, to protect the men. Unwanted sexual contact. Oh, you mean sexual assault? No. Unwanted sexual contact. 60% of all rapes in prisons are committed by prison staff or guards. Well, of course, how is that news? Of course the people with power are going to be raping the people with no power. But the media has told us, oh no, it's actually these violent inmates who are raping other inmates. Yeah, that does happen. But why? Because there's a rape culture in the prison enforced by the guards. That's why. 1 out of 10 rape victims is male. It's almost never reported. Because in a patriarchal culture, men are supposed to be the ones raping women, but they're not supposed to be the ones being raped. So, The Lonely Soldier is a book about 5 women serving in the military in Iraq. One of them said, I ended up waging my own war against an enemy dressed in the same uniform as mine. So even if, as a woman, you buy into the patriarchal structure, you make yourself one of them, you put on the same uniform, you go to the land, and you wait and watch and keep silent while they rape the women of that land, you will also be one of those women who gets raped. It won't end just because you're wearing the same uniform. And this book basically talks about the incredible loneliness, isolation, misogyny, assault, violence that they suffered from their own fellow comrades. And yet, here we see the military actually had a campaign to talk about sexual assault and sexual harassment. And I am the force behind the fight. I am committed to stopping sexual harassment and sexual assault. I am living the army values. I am protecting the members of my team, and yet it's women. Men aren't expected to do it. Why would the men be expected to do it? They're right. They're entitled. Use and burn up things at an ever-accelerating rate. So this is what white male privilege looks like. This person, her name is Jasmine Abdullah Richards. She's a Black Lives Matter activist. She was peacefully protesting. During the protest, she defended a woman from unlawful police detainment. She was arrested and convicted of felony lynching, despite having committed no violence. She served 90 days in jail and has 3 years of probation. This schmuck, rapist Brock Turner, Brock? Really, Brock? His father defended him by saying that his life could be ruined by 20 minutes of action. The judge felt that prison would have a damaging effect on him, so only sentenced him to 6 months, and he actually served 3. This is what white male privilege looks like. Toxic masculinity manifests in these ways, right? Bro culture, all of these fraternities, right? They're full of it, they're everywhere. Contempt for women in language, in swear words, objectifying and slut-shaming and gaslighting. Gaslighting, this word is very important, you must understand what it means. Gaslighting is when someone convinces someone else that what they remember is not what happened, even though what they remember is 100% true. And they say, are you sure you remember it right? Because, I feel like maybe you might be overreacting. Maybe you're over-emotional and you're just like applying stuff that didn't really happen. Maybe I should talk to this man just to see whether or not they're a nice person. That happened to me recently. There was someone preying on women in an activist camp. And I went to someone who called himself a white male ally, and I told him this person's a predator, go and deal with them. So what he did was, he didn't go and deal with them. He went and had a 5-minute conversation with them to see whether or not they were a nice person. Yeah, that's gaslighting. Gaslighting. Homophobia. Because homosexuality doesn't fit into the toxic masculine idea of what masculinity is, right? So it must be stamped out. Transphobia, because transgender people don't fit into the gender binary. The gender binary is the way that toxic masculinity enforces its will and its domination upon everyone else, so they also have to be stamped out. Rejection for any call for accountability. That is toxic masculinity. So when you said that, how long do I have? I can't see it. 30. Awesome, thanks. So when you try to hold people accountable when they're doing these things, they'll say, no, I don't need to be accountable to you. I'm not going to be accountable. In fact, I'm going to get rid of you. Right? What men demanding their privilege and rejecting any call for accountability, and forcing others to do labor while crediting themselves for that labor. I've told many different cis-nels, thanks. I've told many different cis-nels in the movement that they need to do anti-patriarchy training. You know what they tell me? Can you find a training place for me to go to? Can you be my secretary and like book that for me, thanks? Fuck that. Fuck you, white man. That's not how this works. The most potent and prevalent toxic masculinity manifests as white male privilege, okay? But it also manifests in men of color. It manifests massively in men of color. Toxic masculinity is the micro day-to-day manifestation of the macro system of white supremacist patriarchy, right? That's what it is. That's how you have to understand what this is. The micro day-to-day manifestations of the systemic abuse that we are all subjected to. So when it comes to transphobia and homosexuality, over 1,500 people have been killed in transphobic hate crimes in the last 6 years worldwide. 1,500 people. And this, by the way, this is at least 6 months old. So I don't know what the number is now. Homosexuality is found in over 450 species. Homophobia is found in only one. Which one seems unnatural now? Genders beyond the binary have always existed. Okay? Gender is a spectrum. And historically, many cultures around the world have not viewed gender as only male or female. Right? Binary gender identity was forced on many different peoples by colonizers. Okay? By colonizers. It is a colonial construct. Toxic masculinity and gun culture. So, this gun is called Big Dick. Big Dick. Get Big Dick and be envied by every boy in school. Every boy has heard of the big rapid-fire machine gun, Big Dick. Modeled as closely as a toy can be after its big brother at the front. This gun was a toy gun in 2018 in a children's magazine, advertised in a children's magazine in 1918. During World War I, boys were being taught that guns were big dicks. And then you wonder where gender-based violence comes from. Bell Hooks tells us, the first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence towards women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem. Right? Rituals of power to assault his self-esteem. Because in order to maintain white supremacist patriarchal control, men have to fall in line. That means men need to step out of that line. It means men need to do the work to smash the patriarchy, because we are fucking exhausted. So let's look at some male mental health. Research suggests that men who have playboy attitudes may face a higher risk of mental health trouble than men who don't. You could argue that the playboy attitude is a mental health problem. Let's look at some statistics. 70% of suicides every year are committed by men. That's horrific. That's horrific. 80% of those dependent on alcohol are male. Okay? I am so sick of people thinking that drinking is just about having a good time. No, alcohol is the way that the system keeps you in line. That's what it is. Smash the patriarchy and get away from that stuff. It numbs you to your pain, right? Why do you drink? To forget them. But you're not forgetting anything. And all you do is you take what you still remember and you take it out on those who can't defend themselves. And then you say, I was drunk. I wasn't in my right mind. But you were in your right mind when you picked up that bottle. You were in your right mind then. 72% of people treated for depression in the UK are women, and yet 77% of suicides are committed every year by men. These are statistics from England, but they pretty much reflect exactly what is going on here. 1 in 8 men in the UK are diagnosed with depression. In the UK, a year. 1 in 8 men compared to 1 in 5 women. Men between the ages of 20 and 49 are more likely to die from suicide than any other way. So this is in the UK. Let's not forget, right? How much of the planet did the British control? For how long? Most of it. And they exported their white male patriarchy around the entire globe, and we are all suffering from it, just as they are still suffering from it. And I was born in England, so I can say this shit. The average age of first onset of depression is 25 to 29. Young. Really young. Patriarchy is paternalistic. It treats people of color and indigenous people like children, as if they can't take care of themselves. One tactic was to separate children from parents to force assimilation and military control. In Australia and in Canada in particular, the child welfare system was the wolf in sheep's clothing. But they would come and say, oh, this child is being neglected, so we're going to go and take them and put them into a foster care system where they're going to be raped and abused and tortured, and we're going to call that taking care of the children. Meanwhile, we're going to tell them that they're orphans. We're going to tell them that their parents didn't want them. We're going to tell them that they've been abandoned. And this is still happening. It's still happening. More children are being taken today in Australia than during the Stolen Generations period. Yeah, than during the Stolen Generations period. Today, in June 2016, the number was 16,846 Aboriginal children were in out-of-home care in June 2016. Men of color are emasculated by white supremacist patriarchy. They've always been emasculated by white supremacist patriarchy. That's why they were called boy, slave, savage, monkey. It was a way to dehumanize and emasculate them so that they couldn't protect their women, so that they were easier to control, so that they were easier to whip and beat and keep down. And because of that, they felt hopeless, and they do feel hopeless because they've been robbed, imprisoned, beaten, objectified, murdered, lynched, and left unable to protect their families. And of course, the patriarchal structure tells you that it is the man's job to always protect the family instead of understanding that the family must work as a unit, right? And what happens is they take out their anger at the system on who? Those who can't defend themselves, on their women and on their children, which completes this cycle of violence that has been imposed upon us by colonizers. Due to a culture of patriarchy, humans, mostly white men, try to dominate nature. We steal her body, fossil fuels, forests, water, animals, minerals, as if they just belong to these men, as if she just belongs to this man. Yeah, we pollute the water, the land, the air, despite the fact that millions of other species live here, right? Humans act like it's our right to ruin the natural habitat of others. We kill animals as if we have a right to. We treat them as if they exist for our pleasure. Just the way patriarchy treats women as if we exist for their pleasure. But the World Watch Institute tells us that animal agriculture is the leading source of greenhouse gas emissions. One of them, if not the most leading cause, 51% of of global greenhouse gas emissions. And who eats the most meat? The most meat is eaten in the global north by white people. And even in your family, who eats the most meat? The white man, right? The white man. And yet, people of color living in global north countries have been indoctrinated into thinking that they have to eat meat too. In order to assimilate, in order to be manly, and if you're a man of color and you've been told that you don't qualify as male because you're not white, you want to be as manly as possible, right? So you're going to eat all this crap, right? You're going to put it in your body and not think about the fact that this is destroying the planet and our ability to survive on this planet. We are in mass extinction. This was the Miss America cattle auction. You can't see it very well. I'm sorry about the graininess. But the woman is naked, and they've drawn pieces on her as if to show that her body is like meat, like that's rib, that's a round, that's a thigh, breast, you know, all of the pieces of meat that you eat, right? Drumstick, you know, because she is to be consumed, just the same way the cow is to be consumed, just the same way the pig is to be consumed, just the same way the person of color is to be consumed. Australia's tastiest cheese. They actually called it coon. They actually called it coon, America's tastiest cheese. And there was like a huge backlash, like, that's hella racist. And they're like, yeah, okay. And then, of course, I think they changed it. But they actually put that out there. They thought that was okay. Because it's the truth. I mean, they're consuming us in order to eat their cheese. At least they're being honest about it. Projected impact of climate change on agricultural yields. All of these countries here in the red, orange, yellow, they are all going to stop. Funnily enough, this is where all of the people of color live. The black and brown people. And in those black and brown families, who's going to starve first? Women. Because they're going to make sure that their man eats because he has to go to work. They're going to make sure that the children eat. They're going to make sure that the elders eat. And they will starve. Access to clean water. Women around the world spend 16 million hours per day collecting water in sub-Saharan countries, 25 sub-Saharan countries. Women spend 16 million hours per day collecting water. If you're doing that, at what point are you going to have time to learn how to read? At what point are you going to have time to go and take a self-defense class? At what point are you going to have time to protect your daughter from being trafficked? At what point are you going to have time to protect your land from fossil fuel colonizers? At what point are you going to have time to leave him if he beats you? If you're spending 16 million hours per day looking for water. And by the way, you could die from no water, so it's priority. It's priority. 748 million people are still without clean water around the world. Women and girls, particularly in the forest and rural areas, are disproportionately affected. Because if you're spending all that time looking for water, you're going to be sweating, right? So you're sweating, you're losing water, you're dehydrated. So who are you going to give priority to when the water gets shut down? It's not going to be the women. And of course, one of the biggest problems in the global north in dealing with patriarchy is white feminism. That's one of the biggest problems that we have. Because you have white feminists like this schmuck over here, saying things like, what does race have to do with feminism? It's very clear what race has to do with feminism. If we pay attention, if we listen to women and femme-bodied people, right, of color, it's very clear to see exactly what is going on here. But white feminism has always been patriarchal and exclusionary. Recently, the pink hats that we saw, the pink pussy hats during the Women's March, because, you know, all vaginas are pink, right? Because all women have vaginas, right? Except that, what about trans women? What about non-binary people? Right? It is incredibly racist and exclusionary, but they did it, and they did a national march, and they were proud, and there was a sea of pink hats everywhere you looked. So I'm going to give you some definitions. Mansplaining. A man explaining something obvious to a woman or another marginalized person. If you're a man, just shut the fuck up. Shut your mouth, please, okay? White-splaining. A white person explaining something obvious to a person of color or an indigenous person. If you're a white person, just shut the fuck up. Please, stop. Tone policing. People with privilege silencing marginalized people by regulating how they express themselves. When people with privilege can't argue with what the marginalized person has said, they argue with how they said it. That's what tone policing is. Never do it, and if you see anyone doing it, call it out immediately. Call it out, because it's only allowed to go on because people with privilege let it go on. We are not things. If you want to smash the patriarchy, if you want collective liberation, you have to understand we are not things. Mother Earth is not a thing. Women are not things. Queer and trans people are not things. Animals are not things. And you know who also is not a thing? White males. White males aren't things either. You are not just an object to be wound up and sent to decimate people. You are a person. You have a heart. You have a mind. You can change this. So let's look at some leverage points. How can male allies change the system? First of all, you need to stop fighting the truth. You need to stop fighting it. You need to accept it so you can work to change it, right? Until we collectively acknowledge the damage patriarchy causes and the suffering it creates, we cannot address male pain. We cannot demand for men the right to be whole, to be givers and sustainers of life. They are imprisoned by a system that undermines their mental health, right? So we can't help men until they start to help themselves, and until they start to accept what the truth is. Don't wait until you have a daughter before you care about dismantling rape culture. I am so sick of this. I am so sick of this, right? Didn't you come from a woman? Don't you exist because of a woman? That made it your problem. Rape is a man's problem. And so we understand here from this graphic, right? So we have the core sex offenders, then we have the facilitators of their sex offense, right? The people who let it happen, right? The people who let it happen. Then you have the bystanders who witness it but do nothing, right? They witness it but they do nothing. And around that there's the casual sexism, the callous sexual attitudes, it says hypermasculinity, but I think that's bullshit because masculinity itself is not toxic. Toxic masculinity is toxic. So I call it toxic masculinity and denigration of women, right? So this is like how it all operates in the system, and you will see within every situation of rape, this is exactly what's happening. This is exactly what's happening. This is a graphic from Pakistan, actually, right? Understand that men can be raped too, but are often silent because of patriarchy. Educate men about internalized oppression, right? Educate men about how the patriarchy has taught them that they're never allowed to speak up about the violence committed against them. And what they're taught is don't get raped. What we need to tell people is don't rape. Okay? Don't rape. This idea that the victims are the ones who are always taught, like, oh, you know, girls have to go and have like a rape awareness talk, you know, and like self-defense classes. Those would be necessary if we didn't teach the men and everyone else that rape is not okay and we need to stop. And if you are doing this, yeah, that's rape culture, stop that too. Understand that women and men have been surviving patriarchy for centuries. Recognize that and follow their leadership, right? That means shut the fuck up and listen to women and men. That's what that means, okay? Shut the fuck up and listen, because they've been doing this for a lot longer than you. So be humble, right? The lack of women of color in leadership positions is not just a diversity issue. It's an equity issue. It's reparations, okay? Reparations. Truth and reconciliation, right? We must have healing after the crimes against humanity, after the genocide, right, caused by the systems of oppression. But we're not going to get that without truth and reconciliation. This began in Chile in 1990 and is in many other countries in the global south have been working on this. So we need to learn from those people who've been working on this, right? They've been doing this for a lot longer than we are. We need to learn how they do it and move that forward, bring it forward so that we can move forward with the healing process, right? The truth hurts, but silence kills. Take action in solidarity with Indigenous peoples under the guidance of Indigenous men and women. Radical Indigenous women and men, right? And the reason why I make that distinction is because we all have internalized oppression, right? We've all been indoctrinated into the system. So often what will happen is someone will do something extremely sexist, or they will do something that is sexual harassment, or blatant rape culture. And they'll say, well, it was okay because I asked my wife and she said it was fine. No, it wasn't fine. Your wife is your wife. That means she's hella internally oppressed. Okay? So you need to listen to radical women, right, who have been doing healing work within themselves, who have been doing work to dismantle this, who are aware, hyper aware of what these situations look like and how to disrupt them, how to dismantle them. Okay? Standing Rock was an example of Indigenous resistance and marginalized resistance, right? It was inspired, their tactics at Standing Rock were inspired by the Chiapas, right? One of the tactics that they had was no leader, right? Humility in leadership. No one was declaring themselves and taking a name so that everyone would go worship them, right? That wasn't the point. The point was we are all working towards liberation, and it's not safe. It's not safe to have one central leader or just a few people who are in charge. And that's not free, it's not collective liberation. The indigenous peoples of Bolivia declared the rights of Mother Earth and nature. We need to learn from them. We need to learn from them. That's indigenous people, radical women and femme people getting shit done because they've been fighting the patriarchy a lot longer than you have. Defend water because water is sacred. Okay, this is a picture of me being arrested by the Coast Guard during Keynote. It's literally me being taken by the patriarchy while I'm defending the Arctic water, right? So, by the way, that's me. That's my sister Ian right there. We were at Standing Rock. This was our group, right? At Standing Rock. These things that I'm telling you to do these things. I'm not telling you to do anything I myself have not done. Okay? I'm not telling you to do anything I myself have not done. Oppose war and empire wherever it is. Wherever it is. This is Allah. She's an Iraqi girl from Baghdad. An Iraqi woman, I'm sorry. I lost my home, friends, and sisters, and every beautiful memory I had there. Now I live in the US on my own with PTSD, ADD, and bad mental health. I didn't have the life you had when I was a child. I'm very simple. She says, I hope everyone with a shred of conscience will reject military orders to participate in war. And this was from the Our Lives, Our Right campaign. Disrupt the system with direct action, right? That means you stop the 1% from making money. Okay? It's just really simple. The white men do this to make money. So you stop them making money, right? You force them to actually be accountable, right? And that's us at Break Free. Direct action must be creative and bold. Use white male privilege to shut down the system so that people of color don't have to keep risking themselves. Okay? Use your white privilege. so that people of color don't always have to be the ones being taken by the cops, right? And of course, this was Portland, you shall know, right? And you shall not pass. This was, I mean, we did some amazing stuff, and that was an example of, you know, so many of the white people in Portland using their privilege, right? And shall know itself, right? Which in Seattle we were doing, and we started in solidarity with indigenous people of the Arctic, right? We were following their leadership because they've been trying to stop this for how long? So we were in solidarity with them, but what Seattle has is white privilege, right? So we were utilizing that white privilege to raise the consciousness, and that campaign spread around the world, right? Because when white people talk, people listen. Work with elders to confront the system, okay? Leverage their privilege to shield people of color and youth from police brutality, right? And from the brutality of the system. This was us shutting down Patty Murray's office, Senator Patty Murray, right? With the Raging Grannies. Yes. Yes. And it was awesome because we had the Raging Grannies with us, and we also had white males with us, right? And what it meant was, how people can call cops. What were they going to do? Arrest elderly white women in an elderly white woman's senator's office? That's her base. She can't do that shit. So we went in there, and it was us who did the talking, right? It was women of color who did the majority of the talking. But they couldn't do anything about it. Use your white privilege and your elder privilege to shut shit down. Demand change from politicians, while also understanding that change will never come from within the system. Okay? You have to understand. Yeah, Bernie Sanders was great. Bernie Sanders is also an imperialist. Okay? Bernie Sanders is also an imperialist. So you have to understand that it's not going to be some politician somewhere who's going to save us. It will never happen. We must save ourselves. Speak the truth. Don't fear it. Okay? Respectability politics exists as a way to silence marginalized people, right? That's why they turn police. You're too angry, you know, you're being really aggressive right now. You're being too loud. You're being too loud. People of color will hear that often and have heard that often. You just lower your voice. You're being too loud. You're too angry. Why are you so aggressive, right? So smash that. Whenever you see that, smash it and utilize your privilege to smash it, right? Don't be afraid of it. What is the hardest thing? The hardest thing in the whole world is for white men to talk to other white men about their patriarchy and rape culture. They won't do it. They're like, oh, but you know, he's my friend. Yes, he's your friend. That's why you should fucking talk to him. Not just talk to him, regulate on his ass. Tell him, well, you know, if you're not going to fall in line, we're going to have to banish you. There should be consequences from white men when white men enact rape culture. And by the way, you're all clapping, but when it comes to actual practice, you won't do it. You won't do it. Remember, I began this, I'm not going to censor anything that I say to protect your fragility. There are white men in this room who call themselves my white male allies, who refuse to do anything about it. In that moment, in that time, they failed, and then they failed again, and then they failed again, and then they continue to fail. Right? Smash that. So when you're in that situation, I want you to remember my words right here. That's why I won't protect your fragility, because when I smash your fragility, it's going to hurt you. You'll remember that. You'll remember that pain. Our brain remembers pain much easier than it remembers joy. I could come in and be like, so awesome, and you'd just be really inspired and you'd love me, and then you'd forget everything I said. That's not okay. So I do what I do deliberately as a tactic to ensure you don't fucking forget my words. Okay? What we need is 3.5% of the population. Social justice history has shown and proved that 3.5% of the population in continuous direct action, shutting down the system, is what will actually move this system towards a more just system, right? 3.5%, that's not a lot. And over half of this country calls themselves progressive. So go get them. Go fucking get them. What are you doing? What are you waiting for? Oh, but we need to talk to the right wing. Fuck them. We don't need them. We need our people to actually show up. That's what we need. And we need an open culture of disapproval towards rape culture, an open call-out culture. Calling it never works. Calling it never works. You can take that to the bank. You could definitely take it to the bank because they're making shitloads of money on your calling in. They're making shitloads of money. Oh, you know, if we just send a letter to the corporation, we'll just be really nice about like, you know, maybe you shouldn't say like that. No, shut them down, call them out, and do it at a personal level as well, in your friendships, in your families, right? This isn't just a macro thing, it's a micro thing. Remember, toxic masculinity, the day-to-day manifestations of this. Grace Lee Boggs tells us, why is nonviolence such an important philosophy? Because it respects the capacity of human beings to grow. It gives them the opportunity to grow their souls. We owe that to each other. You know why? Because we are not things. You are not a thing. You are a soul. You have the right to grow your soul. And we've been conditioned into this system, right? We've been conditioned. That's why those of us who've broken free from the matrix have compassion. We want to have compassion for those who are still in the system and who are still hopelessly enmeshed in that, right? That's why this is such an important philosophy. And because it ensures that as many people as possible can take part, right? Because it ensures that women can be in leadership. It ensures that people with disabilities can be in leadership, right? It's very important. Protest police brutality and racial profiling. Dismantle the police. It's not enough just to be like, oh, you know, we just need them to be retrained. No, fire all of them. How could you retrain people who actively go out and commit crimes and call it their job? You can't do that. You have to fire the lot of them and actually create community service to protect our people. So we need to build a new system. That's what that means. We need to build a new system. You're not going to win by propping up the old system, right? You also need to rethink masculinity, okay? I mean, this is something that we've been talking about this whole time. I hope you picked up on it. Learn from indigenous and ancient POC cultures about divine masculinity and divine femininity, and they exist in us no matter what gender we are. No matter what gender we are, okay? I'm no less a man because I fear. I'm no less a man because I'm mentally ill. I'm no less a man because I get to decide what it means for me to be a man. Create quality education, not incarceration, right? Not incarceration. Move away from fossil fuels, just transition. Move towards that. Learn about what it means. Be part of it. Implement and understand ecofeminism under the guidance of women of color and femme people, right? Create local Skillshare collectives to serve the local community. Let's move away from these corporations. Let's move away from all of these companies that make us pay them to do certain things. We know, because we work for those companies. We know how to do this shit. Why are we doing it for each other, right? Let's do that. Let's move away from money and let's move towards service. Open the borders, fuck's sake. Be in solidarity with queer and trans people, of course, or particularly queer and trans POC. Understand that your liberation is connected to everyone else's intersectional justice. I'm convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society that's MLK. I'm going to go through this really, really quick so we can need to wrap up. Build community by doing loving things together, okay? It shouldn't just all be like angry, go. Nurture, nourish, love. Okay? You're not going to do this unless you like each other. You're not going to care about someone else's liberation if you don't like them, if you don't spend time with them, if you don't care about them. Okay? Build community by using transformative justice practices, such as peacemaking circles. Okay? Build community by creating off-the-grid, radically sustainable housing. Stop paying bills to the white man's system. What are we doing? We're helping them. That's not okay. We need to stop helping them. Okay? Build community, health, and sustainability by growing food and eating together. Dismantle industrial agriculture and welfare exploitation. Dismantle toxic masculinity in your food. Eat a plant-based diet. Okay? Also remembering not to be a toxic white vegan. Okay? Don't talk to indigenous people about veganism. Shut your mouth, you're on their land. Okay? Holistic healthcare to smash the patriarchy under the guidance of legitimate, decolonized teachers of holistic healthcare practices. That's very important. Don't go to your local yoga studio down the street bastardizing my culture. Don't do that. Don't give them money. They're thieves. Dismantle capitalism by building radically local holistic economy. Uplift the voices of children and youth, such as the Earth Guardians, Plant the Planet, Our Children's Trust, and many, many, many more. Okay? Keep doing it. Why are we doing this if not for them? Right? And don't wait until you have a daughter to do it. Commit to lifelong anti-racism and anti-patriarchy training. You're not going to be fixed in a weekend or in a day's training, okay? It's not how this works. You're going to mess up. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to mess up. It's not okay to not take responsibility when you've messed up. So be accountable, particularly to women and femmes of color. Listen when they tell you how you've hurt them. Follow their instructions on how to be better males. Don't expect forgiveness. Don't expect forgiveness because you're not entitled to any. You're entitled to improve your allyship. You are not entitled to harass women of color by demanding that they forgive you. You're not entitled to do that. Be humble. The same way a white person will always be a racist, you will always be a patriarch. Listen and follow the guidance of women and femme people to stay on guard against your ego. Don't be a male savior or a fake male feminist. Oh, sorry. The true root of the problem. So the truth is that all of the systems of oppression come from patriarchy. Because patriarchy is about control. It's the idea that you have a male body, therefore you're entitled to control and dominate others so that you get what you want for your male body, right? And where does that come from? It comes from the ego. Because the ego convinces you that you are your body. The ego convinces you that you are your body, and that makes you a thing. That makes you an object. So in order to actually get to the root of the problem, you have to understand this is a spiritual problem. And a spiritual problem can only have a spiritual solution. That means we have to understand, we have to have spiritual practices, we have to decolonize our minds so that we understand we are not a body, we are a heart, a mind, a soul, and that your liberation is everyone else's liberation. Why do we close our eyes when we pray, cry, kiss, dream? Because the most beautiful things in life are not seen, but felt only by heart. They're not seen. They're not seen, they're felt only by heart. And that's it. Decolonize your mind, heal, walk the path of love. If you do so, you will never be too tired to smash the patriarchy. And that's our mission.